Breath of the Wild, much like any other Legend of Zelda game, has a made-up language. It's basically just a transcription of English letters, and I've always wondered, like, well, does this work out for the Japanese version of the game, or does this, like, do they use a different alphabet for the Japanese version of the game, or I don't really know. But apparently the letters transcribe into English pretty well. And based on this, they've actually been able to decode a few things about Breath of the Wild that may give it some revealing things as far as the timeline goes, where it falls in the timeline. I saw an article this week that said that it didn't make any sense on the timeline anywhere, and I haven't played far in the game at all well enough to know where it takes place. My beginning theory anyway that I'm going to start with is that this probably takes place all the way at the very end of any of the three timelines. That's what I think. I think it takes place like very, very, very far into the timeline.
I think it takes place after like the timeline of Link failing to beat Ganon, but Zelda's still alive. So, and I know in the beginning of the game it says that like the hero like fell. Like there were like 4 champions, they fell, they got taken over by Ganon,
right? And
then the hero tried to fight him, and he like fell. So then like Zelda like pretty much trapped him inside the castle, which doesn't really connect with the I guess ending of like if you get defeated by Ganon in Ocarina of Time. But I think that it could take place like on that timeline when Link loses against Ganon, and like maybe Zelda like locks him up instead of just getting a game over screen and like try again.
Yeah.
Because I don't think in any other game the Temple of Time has been like a thing. I think A Link to the Past they had like something. It was like the shrine, or maybe I don't know. I could just be talking nonsense. The only game that I know of who talks about the Temple of Time is Ocarina of Time.
Wind Waker.
Does Wind Waker talk about it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And Twilight Princess. That's actually a dungeon. What?
So I'm gonna just like stop talking now.
My bad. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay because it's just a theory. It's a game theory.
Do we have to do that?
A game theory. Yeah, we have to because Nathan's not here. I have to.
Oh my gosh.
I think he would.
He'll appreciate that if he's watching.
Mm-hmm.
So according to a Reddit user, CompC, the special edition of the game, and I think this is like that Switch $100 version of the game that comes with all this extra stuff, has a bunch of a repeating loop of text in the Sheikah language, which is what this alphabet is. And it says in a loop, the Hyrule Fantasy. Now, if you're familiar with the Japanese version of the original Legend of Zelda, that was actually what its title was. It wasn't called Legend of Zelda. I don't even think that title started becoming used until A Link to the Past, and at that point it was Legend of Zelda: Triforce of the Gods. That was that game's Japanese name. But the first Zelda was just called the Hyrule Fantasy. Which that kind of begs the question. So is Breath of the Wild a reimagining of the original Legend of Zelda? I think it could be. It kind of works. I know in that game, so Ganon is a beast. There's no Ganondorf. There's no human form of him. He has conquered Hyrule already, and he is keeping Zelda captive. If you read the manual for the details of the story, Link runs into Impa. Impa doesn't actually appear in the game at all, but Impa is like part of the storyline as Zelda's handmaiden, and you do talk to Impa. Like it's pretty much like the first thing you're told to do once you're unleashed on the world of Hyrule, you emerge. In the first game, you're supposed to go into a cave and get a sword from an old man. You don't know who the old man is in the game. You find out who he is in Breath of the Wild. But very similar, you emerge from a cave in Breath of the Wild, and I honestly, like, if this is true, I think this is really cool if it is. And I'm completely okay with it too, like, as far as, like, timeline canon, because I mean, let's face it, the original Legend of Zelda was like, it literally has like a crawl if you wait a few seconds on the title screen that basically is like, so you Ganon, get out, princess, you have to go find the 8 pieces of the Triforce, have fun. Link in quotation marks, Ganon in quotation marks. I love going back and visiting like NES era translations of games. They're hilarious. Like even little things that are they're not grammatically wrong, but they just sound like this is a direct translation. Like, congratulations, you are a great player. Maybe that is grammatically wrong. But yeah, what would you think if this theory actually turns out to be true? Do you think this would be pretty cool? You can talk now.
Thank you, Master. I've heard a lot of people say that it feels and looks a lot like the first game, just like 100 times better, like looking, gameplay wise, like everything it does better than the first one. But as far as comparing it to like any other Zelda game before, it's more like the first one than like any other one.
Yeah.
Because no other game has just had like an open world as big as that, which if you look back at the first one, it's not super big, but it's all open world
by screen.
Yeah, like it's like there's no towns, there's nothing. You just like go to the different areas. They both have hidden areas that you kind of have to look for. And Breath of the Wild, they kind of make them a little obvious, just because like the rocks that you can blow up have like they're a different color, and there's also like cracks all over them, so it's a little bit easier to see them.
And that's been a Zelda staple for years.
Yeah. And like there's things like, and also there's also a bunch of shrines that are hidden like that. I didn't know that because I spent like 15 minutes trying to find like this shrine, and I was like, I can't find it. And then I accidentally ran across a bomb wall and I blew it up, and the shrine was like in the cave. So I thought that was also a really cool thing that it did in that. And I think, aren't there like a few like dungeons that you don't have to do in the original game, but you can like find them by accident?
Well, you have to beat all the dungeons because you have to get all of the Triforce pieces, but you can play them out of order. Like there is a set order, like there is level 1, level 2, level 3, but you can play.
They don't tell you that.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
You can wander. You can also like wander to different parts of the map where there are enemies that are stupidly strong if you're just starting out the game, and that can one-shot you, just like in this one.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is supposed to be like the new beginning. It would. Well, I guess the timeline doesn't really start with the first game.
Technically, the earliest game is Skyward Sword.
Mm-hmm. So, I guess they could make it like before that. I don't know how they like do their timelines. I think that the way that they've done it now is kind of it's interesting, and at least there's like something.
Yeah.
But
well, and the thing that I think it's late in the timeline simply because there's other, people call them Easter eggs. I would say there's locations in the game that are now like ruins that you've seen in previous games, like the Temple of Time. That looks just like it did in Ocarina of Time. I think it takes place either at the very end or could be a reimagining. I really like the fact that they took some concept art from the first game of Link crouching down and like looking out across Hyrule. They basically, and they did like concept art for Breath of the Wild with Link doing the exact same stance, looking out over Hyrule. So maybe that's just paying homage to the first game, or maybe that's like a big hint, like, yeah, this is like a Legend of Zelda 1 remake or retelling, however you want to say it. But yeah, I think it would work really well if they did go that way.